Velar drew herself up, light fracturing defiantly across her form. "Admiral Chen, you violate our sovereign space with a show of blatant aggression. This is an act of war." "Is it?" Chen asked, her head tilting slightly. The ghost of a smile touched her lips, devoid of warmth. "We have not fired a shot since your Captain Zir attacked us. We are surveying. By what right do you claim sovereignty over this space? By right of discovery, stewardship, and 10,000 years of maintained peace." Velar's harmonics sharpened. "Ah, the right of the first gunboat, polished by time into tradition," Chen mused. "A familiar principle, one my species understands perhaps too well. Let me offer a new principle: effective control. We can be anywhere in your so-called space, at any time. You cannot stop us. Therefore, your claim of sovereignty here is contingent on our forbearance." Admiral Thexor stepped forward, his mandibles clicking in fury. "You speak like conquerors." "We speak like realists," Chen replied, her gaze locking with his. "Humanity will expand. We will explore. We will settle. We will protect our interests. The Galactic Council may continue to administer those who willingly adhere to your framework. We propose delineated spheres, mutual non-interference, and a standing communication link to prevent misunderstandings." "And if we refuse this realignment?" Velar asked, every facet of her being glowing with defiant light. Admiral Chen's expression hardened, the brief veneer of diplomacy evaporating. "Then you will learn the difference between a military that polices a peaceful order and a military engineered for existential war. Do not mistake our offer for weakness, High Counselor. It is a courtesy. The alternative is a demonstration you will not survive." Chen out. The screen went dark. The silence in the Nexus was no longer stunned. It was necrotic. The ultimatum was clear: accept a shared galaxy or be rendered irrelevant. Their supremacy, the very bedrock of their identity, was being negotiated not at a diplomatic table, but on a strategic map where their pieces were already surrounded. In the weeks that followed, the theory became crushing reality. The human ships did not withdraw. They began slow, deliberate patrols along major trade lanes. Where Council patrols approached, the human vessels did not alter course. They did not respond to hails. They were immovable objects, and the Council's authority shattered against them like waves on a cliff. And then the defections began. It started with the fringe systems, worlds long neglected. Their requests for increased patrols against pirates or disaster relief met with Council bureaucracy's slow, grinding wheels. A human cruiser would enter a system, silent. Within days, human engineering teams would arrive on freighters, not warships. They would repair shattered orbital habitats in weeks, when Council estimates were months. They would deploy networked sensor buoys that eliminated pirate ambush points. They asked for nothing. They simply fixed. Then the offers came, transmitted not to governments first, but to public data nets, to civilian channels. The United Earth Protectorate offers mutual defense and economic partnership. Sovereign systems retain internal autonomy. Request for affiliation open. The first system to formally secede from the Council, the Zeta Reticuli Mining Consortium, did so with a public ceremony broadcast galaxy-wide. Their representative, a grizzled asteroid smelter, stood beside a calm human diplomat. "The Council promised protection and took our taxes," he said, his image flickering across a million screens. "The humans are protection. They don't promise. They are. It was a virus of competence. 17 systems broke away in the first month. Then 23 human protectorate fleets, small groups of those terrifying cruisers, took up station around them. Not a single pirate raid or corporate coercion was attempted. The peace was absolute, and it was enforced by the most terrifying peacekeepers the galaxy had ever known. Back on Council Prime, the emergency sessions became a permanent state of affairs. The economic reports were hemorrhaging red. Trade routes were rerouting to protectorate space for safety. Member species were withholding fleet contributions, secretly sending envoys to human liaisons. The Council was not being invaded. It was being abandoned, its body politic dying of organ failure. Valar convened the final fateful session in the Great Central Chamber, now half empty. They offer a better product, she stated, the admission costing her a part of her soul. Efficiency over tradition. Results over ritual. What do we offer in return? The glory of a fading past. Admiral Thexor, who had argued for war until the end, now stood with the quiet defeat of a strategist who sees an unwinnable board. Our combined fleet could perhaps inflict damage on their forward elements, but intelligence suggests they have a new vessel class nearing completion. The designators leak from their shipyards. Titan class. The first is to be named Leviathan. Estimated length, 37 kilometers. The number hung in the air, a tombstone for their ambitions. A ship that could blot out a continent from orbit. As if summoned by their despair, the main doors opened. A human delegation entered, led by a woman whose presence commanded the vast space without effort. She wore a diplomat's uniform, dark and severe, and her eyes swept the chamber, meeting the gaze of every remaining species. I am Ambassador Diana Reyes of the United Earth Government, she announced. Her voice clear in the heavy silence. I believe we have reached an inflection point. You enter uninvited, a counselor cried, the protest sounding feeble, childish. I enter as the representative of 37 sovereign stellar systems who were once yours, Reyes replied, her tone leaving no room for debate. They have chosen new representation. You have a choice before you. You can cling to the authority you are losing and force a conflict that will only end with your obliteration. Or you can adapt. Adapt to subjugation? Valar asked, her light dim. Adapt to reality, Reyes corrected. The galaxy is vast. There is room for the Council's cultural alliance, for those who value its traditions. And there is room for humanity's protectorate, for those who value security and progress above all else. We propose formal borders, recognition of mutual sovereignty, an end to your claims over our affiliated systems. And if we refuse this, partitioning of our realm, Valar whispered. Reyes's gaze was not unkind, but it was as inexorable as a law of nature. Then history will record that the Galactic Council chose to die of pride. The Leviathan launches in 6 months. Its shakedown cruise will require ample space for testing. We would hate for there to be any accidents in what you still consider your space. It was not a threat of invasion. It was a promise of obsolescence. The human strategy was now devastatingly clear. They did not need to conquer the Council. They were simply building a newer, stronger, more attractive galaxy right next door, and inviting everyone to move in. The Council was not facing an enemy. It was facing a better idea, armored in 37 kilometers of polarized armor plate. As Ambassador Reyes turned to leave, her final words echoed in the silent, dying chamber. The future is not a prize to be won. It is a frame to be built. We are building. You are welcome to build your own elsewhere. But do not stand in the way of the machinery. The doors sealed behind her. The last great council of the old order was left in a silence, broken only by the hum of failing systems and the quiet, desperate sound of an empire realizing it was already a relic. The war was over. It had never been a war of weapons, but a war of paradigms. And humanity's paradigm, cold, efficient, and terrifyingly powerful, had won without firing a single shot from its main guns. The galaxy had shifted on its axis. The question was no longer how to defeat humanity, but how to survive in a universe they were now so decisively shaping. The galaxy had shifted on its axis. The Deep Space Monitoring Station hung in the void like a skeletal metal lantern, its spindly sensor arrays piercing the eternal night. For 300 silent cycles, it had been the galaxy's unblinking eye, a sentinel of steel and silica, tasked with watching a forgotten quadrant where stars were born and died in perfect, meaningless solitude. It recorded cosmic dust and the ghostly whispers of solar winds, a cataloger of emptiness. Captain Zier moved through its hushed control room, the soft luminescence glinting off his cerulean skin, his 4 arms clasped in ritual stillness behind his back. Around him, a mosaic of alien species tended their consoles, their purpose eroded by the crushing monotony of a watch that had yielded nothing but silence. This was the frontier of the Galactic Council's dominion, a realm they had ruled with benevolent, unassailable authority for 10 millennia. Here, in the stillness, their supremacy felt less like a triumph and more like a quiet, unquestioned law of physics. Like, subscribe, share, and comment below to join us on this journey into the unknown. Catherine, her insectoid eyes clicking with a rhythm born of profound boredom, adjusted her long-range sensors for the 100th time that shift. Cosmic static and stellar nursery songs, she muttered. The translation matrix flattening her bitterness into a simple report. Another shift, another eternity. Zier offered a shallow nod, sharing the unspoken fatigue. As an officer of the Council fleet, he had once dreamed of first contact, of ushering wide-eyed, primitive species into the enlightened fold of galactic civilization. Instead, he presided over a temple of silence. Then the silence broke. "Sir," the voice was Velnor's, thin and tremulous, his tentacles a blur over the comm panel. "An anomaly. Energy signatures. They do not conform to any known profile." Zier crossed the deck, the magnetic soles of his boots clicking softly. "Define anomaly." "The output is catastrophic in scale," Velnor whispered, as if fearing the sensors might hear. "Concentrated, impossibly dense." A chill, sharp and instinctual, seeped into the room. Catherine's head swiveled, her compound eyes capturing the worried light. "The pattern is artificial," she stated, her claws freezing above the controls. "Too regular, too controlled." Zier stared at the main display as the data unfurled, a symphony of impossible numbers and waveforms that defied the Council's vast databases. This was no natural phenomenon. It was a signature, a declaration written in the raw language of power. "Distance?" he asked, his twin hearts beginning a slow, heavy drum against his ribs. 12 light hours, Catherine replied, her voice hollow. "And closing, direct vector for Council core space." The protocols flashed in Zier's mind. Assemble the diplomatic corps. Prepare the linguists. orchestrate a graceful, controlled introduction to galactic society. The Council's method was a ballet, centuries refined. But this was not a species creeping timidly from its cradle. This was something striding purposefully out of the dark. "Hold all communications to command," Zir ordered, the weight of the decision settling on his shoulders. "We observe." Hours bled away, measured in the relentless climb of the energy readings. The unknown object was not just approaching, it was asserting itself, its presence swelling in their scanners like a thunderhead on a clear day. Finally, Catherine spoke again, the clicking of her claws absent, replaced by a terrible stillness. "Visual acquisition. It is a vessel, Captain." "Dimensions?" She was silent for a long moment, the data reflected in the countless facets of her eyes. "The readings, they must be in error." "Report. 15.2 kilometers, she said, the words dropping like stones. "Length confirmed. Mass suggests structural density beyond any practical metric. It is not a ship, sir. It is a fortress." Parenthetical. A silence profound and absolute engulfed the control room. The Council's mightiest dreadnoughts were 3 kilometers from stem to stern, symbols of power that had never been challenged. A 15-kilometer vessel was an architectural absurdity, a myth given form. "Weapon signatures?" Zir asked, already dreading the answer. Velnor's tentacles shuddered. "The hull, it is a lattice of emission ports. Hundreds, thousands. I cannot map them all." Here was the fulcrum upon which their world would turn. The Council's first contact doctrine was a scalpel, designed for delicate work with primitive cultures. It had no protocol for a blade of this magnitude pointing at its throat. Pride, cold and stubborn, flared within Zir. The Council did not retreat. Their technology was the pinnacle of 10,000 years of progress. Their shields were impervious, their weapons precise. What was brute size against such refinement? "Signal the 4th diplomatic wing," Zir commanded, his voice regaining its officer's cadence. "Standard interception and greeting formation. We will extend the Council's welcome." "Sir," Catherine ventured, "a rare breach of protocol. Should we not request fleet support?" 12 of our cruisers are more than sufficient to greet one vessel, Commander," Zir said, the statement a mantra against his own gnawing doubt. "Even a large one." As the fleet, 12 sleek, deadly cruciform ships, assembled and shot into the void on trails of cobalt light, Zir clung to the narrative of supremacy. But on the station, Catherine watched the sensor feeds, her unease crystallizing into cold dread. The approaching Titan was not just big. Its energy core pulsed with rhythms that spoke of power generation on a stellar scale. Its shields were not merely active. They glowed in the spectra like contained nebulae. And its weapons, they were not just charging. They were singing a hymn of annihilation in a frequency her instruments could barely perceive. The two forces converged in the silent arena of deep space. When the Council fleet finally acquired a clear visual, the last vestiges of Zir's confidence evaporated. The human ship was not merely impressive, it was terrifying. Angular, armored like a planet's crust, studded with weaponry that spoke of a philosophy not of defense, but of utter, irreversible domination. This was no ambassador, it was a clenched fist. Hailing frequencies chirped, a standard greeting package of peaceful intent and universal translation matrices. On the bridge of the UES Ragnarok, Captain Marcus Chen watched the alien formation with the calm of a man who had prepared for every possibility. The transmission resolved into the image of a blue-skinned, multi-limbed being. "Greetings, unknown vessel. I am Captain Zier of the Galactic Council Fleet. You are entering Council space without authorization." Chen stepped forward, the lighting of the Ragnarok's bridge, a functional, harsh clarity against the alien bridge's softer glow, casting his face in sharp relief. "Greetings, Captain Zier. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the United Earth ship Ragnarok. We come in peace, seeking contact." Zier's eyes darted to unseen data. "Your vessel is substantial for a mission of peace." "The universe is unknown, Captain. We believed in being prepared to defend that peace." The exchange turned, subtle as a knife's edge. Zier's tone stiffened into bureaucratic granite. "All vessels must submit to inspection. It is council law." "We are not members of your council," Chen replied, his voice even. "We are explorers. We follow our own laws." On the screen, Zier's lens shifted in clear agitation. "You are in council space. Our law is supreme." Around the Ragnarok, the 12 cruisers shifted, moving with elegant, predatory grace to encircle the human vessel. A classic envelopment, a show of force meant to intimidate a lesser foe. Chen's gaze flicked to his tactical officer, Commander Rodriguez, who gave a barely perceptible shake of his head. The message was clear. They were being corralled. "Captain Zier," Chen said, the words precise, "I propose a diplomatic summit. Our governments can discuss terms." "There are no terms," Zier snapped, the edge of threat finally naked. "Submit to inspection, or you will be compelled." The transmission cut. On the Ragnarok's bridge, the silence was charged. "They've moved to attack formation," Rodriguez confirmed. "They're treating us like a cargo hauler." Chen felt no anger, only a profound, weary resolve. They had hoped for curiosity, for wonder. They were met with arrogance. "All hands to battle stations." When Zier's ultimatum returned, 60 seconds to lower shields, Chen's reply was final. "We will defend ourselves." The Council fleet fired. Brilliant lances of plasma and particle beams, the culmination of millennia of martial science, crossed the void and struck the Ragnarok's shields. The massive human ship absorbed the fury like a mountain accepts rain. The bridge lights didn't even flicker. "No damage," Rodriguez reported. Awe bleeding through his professionalism. Shields at 98%. Chen opened a channel. Zier's face reappeared. Confusion now warring with arrogance. "Impossible! Our weapons!" "Captain Zier," Chen interrupted, his voice the calm at the eye of the storm. "You have fired upon a peaceful vessel. This is your only warning. Stand down." "You bluff. No single ship can withstand a council battle group." "Target the lead vessel," Chen said, his eyes never leaving Zier's image. "Point defense turret 7. Single shot." Rodriguez hesitated for a microsecond. A point defense weapon was for swatting missiles, for surgical strikes. Using it on a capital ship was not just overkill. It was a statement of profound contempt. "Target locked. Fire." A single pencil-thin beam of coherent energy, insignificant against the backdrop of stellar violence, lanced out. It touched the lead council cruiser amidships. The ship did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply ceased to be, transformed instantaneously from a masterpiece of engineering into an expanding, perfectly spherical cloud of incandescent gas. The silence on the open channel was a physical thing, a vacuum sucking at sound and reason. Zier stared, his forearms limp at his sides, his dark eyes wide with a dawning, universe-shattering comprehension. That, Chen said into the terrible quiet, was a point defense weapon, Captain. Designed for intercepting munitions. Would you care to see what our primary armaments can do? The remaining 11 ships hung motionless, their purpose, their very understanding of the cosmos, annihilated as completely as their sister ship. Zier's voice, when it finally came, was a broken whisper. What? What are you? We are humanity, Chen said, and you have just made a very grave mistake. He cut the transmission, leaving the Council fleet adrift in the darkness. Huddled around the glowing tomb of their hubris, the Ragnarok stood immobile, a dark monolith against the starfield, its weapons cooling, but its message now seared into the galactic consciousness. The age of quiet, unquestioned dominion was over. A new, harder dawn was breaking, and its light was the glare of human weaponry. The news, carried on waves of panic and shattered sensor data, crashed upon the gleaming spires of Council Prime like a silent tsunami. In the central command nexus, a chamber where light danced across crystalline architectures and holographic data streams had always flowed with predictable, orderly purpose, a new and terrifying frequency now pulsed. High Counselor Valar, her form a prismatic sculpture of living mineral, stood before the Council's assembled leadership. The air vibrated, not with debate, but with a species of dread so novel it had no name in their ancient tongues. You have seen the tactical record, Valar's voice resonated, its usual harmonic serenity now fractured by discordant undertones. The hologram replayed the unforgiving sequence, the arrogant formation, the futile barrage, the single dismissive beam of light, the bloom of atomic dust. This is not a first contact. It is an obituary for our assumptions. Around the vast circular table, representatives of 100 species sat in stunned paralysis. Admiral Fexer, his carapace seeming to have dulled overnight, manipulated a tactical display. The energy signature of that single strike, it suggests a focused particle disintegration field operating at near-planetary scale. Our shield technology is not merely inferior. It is irrelevant against such a force. One ship, Counselor Kessin, his reptilian scales flushed with agitated color, protested. A single vessel, however large, we must not let panic dictate our response. This could be an anomaly, their one masterpiece. Anomalies do not travel 12 light hours into controlled space, rumbled Dr. Yathara, her cluster of neural tentacles weaving through a storm of incoming data. And they are not alone. New reports scrolled across the main display, fed by stealth probes and trembling border stations. Long-range scans of the human home system, designated Sol, resolved into images that defied economic and logistical sense. Orbital rings, not one, but multiple, encircled their star. Webs of industry so vast they dimmed its light in specific spectrums. Shipyards the size of small moons hung in geosynchronous orbits, their skeletal grips holding the half-formed hulls of new Leviathans. The scale was not merely impressive, it was pathological, a civilization-wide exertion that spoke of a drive bordering on mania. Industrial capacity estimates exceed the combined output of our core worlds by an order of magnitude, Yathara reported, the numbers glowing like accusations. Population, 8 billion on the homeworld alone, with expansionist colonies showing exponential growth curves. Their societal focus appears singular: escalation. To what end? Hissed Councillor Medane, his gaseous form swirling in distress. What possible goal justifies such monstrous preparation? Security, a new voice stated flatly. All turned to the chamber's entrance, where Captain Zier stood, his uniform still bearing the psychic stains of his ordeal. He looked diminished, the aura of council authority stripped from him, leaving behind a being who had stared into an abyss that had stared back with cold, mechanical certainty. Not security through deterrence or through alliance. Security through absolute, overwhelming dominance. They do not build to match a threat. They build to erase the very concept of threat from their reality. The silence deepened, absorbing this terrible diagnosis. Then we must act before that reality consumes ours, Admiral Thexor declared, rising. Full mobilization. The combined fleets of every member species, thousands of vessels. We drown this one ship and any others in sheer volume. And if their one ship can destroy 1,000 as easily as it destroyed one, Dr. Yathara asked, her tentacles still, we would be delivering our entire military into a furnace. We have no tactical data, no understanding of their capabilities' limits. To fight now is to wage a war of faith against physics. The debate that followed was a tempest of fear and fractured pride. Arguments for preemptive strikes clashed with desperate pleas for diplomacy, while a third, terrified faction advocated for retreat, for building a new wall of space and pretending the darkness beyond did not exist. Valar watched the unity of millennia crack like heated crystal. It was then the priority alerts screamed through the Nexus, not from one border, but from 12, then 20, then 37. Multiple contacts. Massive energy signatures matching the first vessel's profile. Sector Gamma 9 reports 3 unknown constructs holding position just outside weapon range. They are everywhere. The holographic star map of Council space lit up with dozens of crimson icons, a galaxy-wide rash of infection. Human ships, Ragnarok-class cruisers, had appeared simultaneously on the fringes of key systems, strategic trade nexuses, and even hovering near lightly defended core agricultural worlds. They did not attack. They did not broadcast threats. They simply appeared, and then they watched. It was a display of strategic reach and logistical prowess so profound it was, in its own way, more terrifying than the vaporization of the cruiser. It communicated a simple, awful truth. We are not a single wonder. We are a culture, and we are already here. Before the Council could formulate a coherent breath, let alone a response, a new transmission sliced through all secure channels. It bypassed encryptions, ignored protocols, and imposed itself on the main display. The human who appeared was not a ship's captain. She was older, her face a landscape of calm authority and eyes that held the weight of stars. Greetings, Galactic Council. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Navy. Period. 6 solar cycles bled into the void, measured not by the stately orbits of Council Prime, but by the relentless, tectonic rhythm of human industry. In the once sacrosanct chambers of the Galactic Council, the air grew thin with the scent of decay and quiet desperation. The great table, now scarred by the absent holographic emitters of seceded systems, stood as a monument to a fading dream. High Counselor Valar, with actions no longer wanted in comprehension, her crystalline form now clouded with microfractures of stress, presided over a gathering of ghosts. The representatives who remained wore the haunted look of survivors on a lifeboat, watching the shore of a new world recede into the distance. The quarterly assessments are conclusive, Dr. Yathara stated, her tentacles weaving a tapestry of dismal light above the central display. The graphs told the story of a patient in terminal decline. Trade volume with Protectorate-affiliated systems had increased 800%. Council-aligned trade had collapsed by 70%. The human economic model is not merely competitive. It is predatory in its efficiency. They offer security, zero-tariff corridors defended by their warships, and technological exchange on a scale we cannot match. Our member worlds are not rebelling. They are emigrating. Admiral Thexor, his carapace dull and heavy, rose. The fire for a final, glorious stand had long since guttered out in his eyes. Military analysis is unchanged. Our stealth probes confirm the launch of the UES Leviathan, the Titan class. A hollow image resolved, stealing the breath from the chamber. The ship was not a vessel. It was a landmass given thrust. 37 kilometers of blackened alloy, studded with weapon emplacements the size of city blocks, its silhouette blotting out the stars behind it. Shakedown exercises have begun in the empty reaches beyond the Hydrax Nebula. Their weapons tests. The energy signatures are consistent with planetary crust penetration munitions. They are not testing a warship. They are testing a world killer. And the Ragnarok? Counselor Kessin asked, the question a whisper. Now classified as a light cruiser in their updated fleet designations, Thexor replied. The words ash in his mouth. The horror was no longer acute. It was chronic, a constant, low-grade fever of irrelevance. The Council was not being destroyed. It was being bypassed. Humanity's protectorate was a gravitational force, pulling systems, resources, and ambition into its orbit, leaving the Council a hollowed-out shell adrift in the political void. The great doors hissed open. There was no announcement, no request for entry. Ambassador Diana Reyes walked in. Not with the guarded step of a diplomat entering hostile territory, but with the assured stride of an architect inspecting a site for renovation. She was followed by two aides, human and calm, and a third figure, a holographic projection of a being the Council recognized with a jolt. Elder Nara of the Zeta Reticuli Consortium, the first to defect. High Counselor, Reyes nodded, her tone respectful but devoid of deference. I come with updated accords from the Protectorate Governing Council, and with a witness. Elder Nara's image solidified. High Counselor Valar, the old miner's voice was firm, without malice. I speak for the 43 systems of the Protectorate's First Federation. We have ratified the Human Compact. I am here to formally sever, under Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, all remaining political and economic ties with this body. The finality of it was a physical blow. Article 7. The right to secede, a clause written in an age of idealistic unity, now wielded as the instrument of their dissolution. You trade one master for another, Nara, Valar said, her light pulsing weakly. No, Nara corrected, shaking his head. The Council was a landlord. It charged rent for peace and delivered mediocrity. The Protectorate is a partnership. We provide resources and territory. They provide an umbrella under which our children can sleep without fear of slaver raids or orbital bombardment. They do not dictate our laws. They guarantee our safety. It is not subjugation. It is the most profound freedom my people have ever known. Freedom from fear. Reyes let the words hang. The offer to the remaining council members stands. Demilitarize your border zones with the Protectorate. Reorient your economies internally. Continue your cultural and scientific alliances. We have no interest in your ceremonies or your archives. We seek only clear borders and a cessation of your claims over systems that have chosen a different path. And if we refuse this diminishment? Velar asked, the question a formality, the answer already written in the stars. Then the Leviathan's shakedown cruise will be extended, Reyes said, her gaze unwavering. Its sensor arrays are exceptionally thorough. Its navigation computers require vast, empty volumes of space for high-velocity maneuvers. Accidents, as you know, happen in crowded skies. It was not a declaration of war. It was a zoning ordinance issued by a god. The message was clear. Stay in your designated historical preserve or be paved over by the inevitable progress of a superior civilization. The chamber erupted, not in anger, but in a cacophony of anguish, of frantic deals being proposed, of species turning on each other in blame. Velar watched the last vestiges of galactic unity shatter. She raised a crystalline limb, and a chime of pure, clear frequency cut through the din. In the silence, she seemed to shrink, her light internalizing. "We will consider the accords," Valar said. The surrender in her harmonics, so profound, it felt like the chamber itself sighed. This session is adjourned, indefinitely. The meeting dissolved not with a vote, but with a slow, silent exodus. Representatives left without looking back, already calculating how to secure the best terms for their individual species in the new order. Valar was left alone with the ghost of Elder Nera and the very real, very present Ambassador Reyes. "It did not have to end in humiliation," Reyes said softly, approaching the dais. "Did it not?" Valar's light flickered, a dying star. "You presented a system with no place for ours. You made us obsolete. What is that, if not humiliation?" "It is evolution," Reyes replied. "One paradigm replacing another. It happened to countless species on Earth. The dinosaurs did not humiliate the mammals. They were simply out-competed. They left space, literally, for something more adaptable to flourish." "And what flourishes in your paradigm, Ambassador?" Valar asked, a genuine curiosity in her final moments of power. "What is the fruit of this terrifying tree you have planted across the stars?" Reyes was quiet for a moment, looking past Valar to the star map, now half darkened. "Security. The freedom to look outward without looking over our shoulder. The certainty that our children's future will not be stolen by a stronger, crueler hand. We bear the scars of a history written in blood and fear. We have vowed, with every bolt in every ship, with every line of code in every shield, to never be victims again. Not to you, not to anyone. That is our fruit. It is bitter to the taste of those used to ruling, but it is nourishing to those who have only known hunger." She placed a data crystal on the table before Valar. "The formal accords. The borders are generous. You have 5 core sectors for your cultural preservation. The rest is protectorate space, or open for expansion. You have 30 days to signal acceptance." Reyes turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hall. The great doors sealed behind her, leaving Valar truly alone for the first time in her centuries of life. She picked up the data crystal. It was cool, Inert, it contained the autopsy report of a 10,000-year-old civilization. In the deep silence, she accessed the central archive, pulling not tactical reports, but cultural records. She watched human history, not the sanitized version, but the raw, unvarnished truth. The wars, the genocides, the endless, repetitive cycles of fear begetting tyranny, begetting violence. She saw the turning point. Not a great enlightenment, but a great resolve. A species-wide decision, forged in the aftermath of a self-inflicted, near extinction, that they would build a wall against the darkness, so high, so thick, that no shadow would ever fall across their home again. They hadn't built a fleet to conquer the galaxy. They had built a moat, and in their terrifying, logical zeal, they had decided that the only way to ensure the moat was never crossed was to own both banks. The fear she had felt for months shifted, transformed into a profound, chilling understanding. Humanity was not evil. They were traumatized, and their trauma had been weaponized into the single most potent force the galaxy had ever witnessed. They weren't seeking empire. They were seeking a universe-sized safe room. On the edge of the Hydrax Nebula, the UES Leviathan completed a full-power weapon cycle. A dummy asteroid, 3 kilometers in diameter, was targeted. There was no brilliant beam, no cataclysmic explosion. One moment, it was there. The next, the space it occupied was a perfect, absolute void, a sphere of nothingness where matter and energy had been forcibly retired from existence. The test was logged as successful. The required safe volume for operations was quietly increased by 15% in the Protectorate's published navigational charts. Across the new border, in what was now officially Council remnant space, the first changes began. Ship construction yards retooled to produce civilian freighters. Patrol fleets were recalled and mothballed. The great martial hymns were replaced by scholarly debates and artistic retrospectives. It was not peace. It was retirement. On the bridge of the Ragnarok, now assigned to patrol the vibrant, bustling trade lanes of the First Federation, Captain Marcus Chen watched a stream of civilian ships, human, Zeta Reticulan, Altiran, flock between stars like confident birds. He remembered the fear in Zir's eyes, the shattered pride of a 1,000-year-old power. He felt no triumph, only a solemn, heavy responsibility. His comm officer turned. So, incoming transmission from Council Remnant Space. Priority channel. It's High Counselor Valar. Chen straightened. Put it through. Valar's image appeared. She looked pared down, simpler. The fracturing light was gone. Captain Chen, I am transmitting the signed accords on behalf of the Galactic Council Remnant. The border is recognized. Chen nodded. Acknowledged, High Counselor. The Protectorate will respect the designated space. I have one question, Captain, Valar said, her voice stripped of its harmonics, leaving something raw and human in its cadence. This security you have bought with your monstrous ships, this freedom from fear, does it satisfy? Does the silence behind the wall ever become lonely? Chen looked out his viewport at the teeming, prosperous space his ship safeguarded. He thought of the Leviathan, a silent titan, ensuring that silence. He thought of Earth, no longer looking to the stars with wonder alone, but with the calibrated gaze of a sentry. It's not about satisfaction, High Counselor, he said finally, meeting her gaze across the light years. It's about ensuring there is a we to feel anything at all. Loneliness is a price we are willing to pay. Oblivion is not. The transmission ended. The galaxy, for the first time in recorded history, was truly, irrevocably divided. Not by ideology or species, but by a fundamental choice: to live in a universe of curated safety, or to live in a universe of unbounded, uncertain potential. Humanity had made its choice with steel and fire. The rest would learn to live with the consequences. And in the infinite dark, the ships of Earth continued their eternal patrol, the guardians of a peace that was absolute, unbreakable, and colder than the void between the stars. 6 solar cycles bled into the void, measured not by the stately orbits of Council Prime, but by the relentless, tectonic rhythm of human industry. In the once sacrosanct chambers of the Galactic Council, the air grew thin with the scent of decay and quiet desperation. The great table, now scarred by the absent holographic emitters of seceded systems, stood as a monument to a fading dream. High Counselor Valar, with actions no longer wanted in comprehension, her crystalline form now clouded with microfractures of stress, presided over a gathering of ghosts. The representatives who remained wore the haunted look of survivors on a lifeboat, watching the shore of a new world recede into the distance. The quarterly assessments are conclusive, Dr. Yathara stated, her tentacles weaving a tapestry of dismal light above the central display. The graphs told the story of a patient in terminal decline. Trade volume with Protectorate-affiliated systems had increased 800%. Council-aligned trade had collapsed by 70%. The human economic model is not merely competitive. It is predatory in its efficiency. They offer security, zero-tariff corridors defended by their warships, and technological exchange on a scale we cannot match. Our member worlds are not rebelling. They are emigrating. Admiral Thexor, his carapace dull and heavy, rose. The fire for a final, glorious stand had long since guttered out in his eyes. Military analysis is unchanged. Our stealth probes confirm the launch of the UES Leviathan, the Titan class. A hollow image resolved, stealing the breath from the chamber. The ship was not a vessel. It was a landmass given thrust. 37 kilometers of blackened alloy, studded with weapon emplacements the size of city blocks, its silhouette blotting out the stars behind it. Shakedown exercises have begun in the empty reaches beyond the Hydrax Nebula. Their weapons tests. The energy signatures are consistent with planetary crust penetration munitions. They are not testing a warship. They are testing a world killer. And the Ragnarok? Counselor Kessin asked, the question a whisper. Now classified as a light cruiser in their updated fleet designations, Thexor replied. The words ash in his mouth. The horror was no longer acute. It was chronic, a constant, low-grade fever of irrelevance. The Council was not being destroyed. It was being bypassed. Humanity's protectorate was a gravitational force, pulling systems, resources, and ambition into its orbit, leaving the Council a hollowed-out shell adrift in the political void. The great doors hissed open. There was no announcement, no request for entry. Ambassador Diana Reyes walked in. Not with the guarded step of a diplomat entering hostile territory, but with the assured stride of an architect inspecting a site for renovation. She was followed by 2 aides, human and calm, and a third figure, a holographic projection of a being the Council recognized with a jolt. Elder Nara of the Zeta Reticuli Consortium, the first to defect. High Counselor, Reyes nodded, her tone respectful but devoid of deference. I come with updated accords from the Protectorate Governing Council, and with a witness. Elder Nara's image solidified. High Counselor Valar, the old miner's voice was firm. Without malice, I speak for the 43 systems of the Protectorate's First Federation. We have ratified the Human Compact. I am here to formally sever, under Article 7 of the Galactic Charter, all remaining political and economic ties with this body. The finality of it was a physical blow. Article 7. The right to secede, a clause written in an age of idealistic unity, now wielded as the instrument of their dissolution. You trade one master for another, Nara, Valar said, her light pulsing weakly. No, Nara corrected, shaking his head. The council was a landlord. It charged rent for peace and delivered mediocrity. The Protectorate is a partnership. We provide resources and territory. They provide an umbrella under which our children can sleep without fear of slaver raids or orbital bombardment. They do not dictate our laws. They guarantee our safety. It is not subjugation. It is the most profound freedom my people have ever known. Freedom from fear. Reyes let the words hang. The offer to the remaining council members stands. Demilitarize your border zones with the Protectorate. Reorient your economies internally. Continue your cultural and scientific alliances. We have no interest in your ceremonies or your archives. We seek only clear borders and a cessation of your claims over systems that have chosen a different path. And if we refuse this diminishment? Valar asked, the question a formality, the answer already written in the stars. Then the Leviathan's shakedown cruise will be extended, Reyes said, her gaze unwavering. Its sensor arrays are exceptionally thorough. Its navigation computers require vast, empty volumes of space for high-velocity maneuvers. Accidents, as you know, happen in crowded skies. It was not a declaration of war. It was a zoning ordinance issued by a god. The message was clear. Stay in your designated historical preserve or be paved over by the inevitable progress of a superior civilization. The chamber erupted, not in anger, but in a cacophony of anguish, of frantic deals being proposed, of species turning on each other in blame. Valar watched the last vestiges of galactic unity shatter. She raised a crystalline limb, and a chime of pure, clear frequency cut through the din. In the silence, she seemed to shrink, her light internalizing. We will consider the accords, Valar said. The surrender in her harmonics, so profound, it felt like the chamber itself sighed. This session is adjourned, indefinitely. The meeting dissolved not with a vote, but with a slow, silent exodus. Representatives left without looking back, already calculating how to secure the best terms for their individual species in the new order. Valar was left alone with the ghost of Elder Nara and the very real, very present Ambassador Reyes. It did not have to end in humiliation, Reyes said softly, approaching the dais. Did it not? Valar's light flickered, a dying star. You presented a system with no place for ours. You made us obsolete. What is that, if not humiliation? It is evolution, Reyes replied. One paradigm replacing another. It happened to countless species on Earth. The dinosaurs did not humiliate the mammals. They were simply out-competed. They left space, literally, for something more adaptable to flourish.